Now, Q&A is the name of the show that Tony's going to be hosting. It's going to be live, which is really going to put the cat amongst the pigeons.
I think with opening Q&A up as a democracy, and it's open season, is that you do get questions. We had a lot of questions on the text line. You get questions like, who would win in a fight between you and Kerry O'Brien?
I'd hate to see that one, really. Yeah, I think Kerry would win hands down, to be honest with you.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah, because he'd be serious about it. He's got that Irish thing going.
Yeah.
We want lots of people with O in front of their name to come on and be in the audience, because they're the fiery ones.
Although your moonlocks make you look distinguished and set you apart from other newsreaders, you're not actually a newsreader, is it?
I've always described it as extinguished.
Have you ever thought of a splash of colour?
Yes. Well, I mean, that's what the ties are for.
Do people really care for Tibet, or is it just any excuse to exercise anti-China sentiment?
Oh, God, that must be a Chinese student writing it. I think people obviously care for Tibet, don't they? I mean, they've been caring for Tibet for a very long time, ever since it was invaded. And I think that sentiment's pretty genuine.
Here's one that's a little less light-hearted. Tony, ABC Folklore claims you once got stuck in a lift just before your show. Is this true?
That is true.
Is it? And how did you get through the ordeal?
That is true. I perspired a lot. And I was stuck in there with our runner, a lovely young woman, and both of us were extremely nervous, I must say. Yeah, but I'm stuck in a lift.
Cameras in the ABC lift.
We were both of us much too nervous for any sort of anything like that, as you can imagine.
So what happened?
Well, the lift actually went to where it's supposed to go, and then it dropped. It just suddenly dropped about 3 feet, so it fell, and we sort of like that, and then it wouldn't open. And eventually, I was there for 20 minutes, and time's ticking away. And
Bruce Willis appeared.
Well, there's a sort of Bruce Willis moment of mine, actually, if you really want to know.
Oh,
Well, I decided to try and prise the doors open, and I'd been doing lots of weights, and it helped a lot.
you are the Chuck Norris.
There's a witness. There's a witness to this.
Current affairs
Someone's
team.
texted in saying, who has been the most difficult person to interview?
I think you've forgotten to mention this person was leaning on an elbow and wagging a pen accusingly.
That's right.
In the typical Tony Jones fashion.
The most difficult. Well, Howard was always the most difficult. I mean, I think every single interview I had with Howard was difficult, and one of the reasons it was difficult was like having a sort of breakfast with my father, who I don't know if you know.
Where are we going with this one, Tony Jones?
Let me go backwards. The last Prime Minister who lost his own seat, sitting Prime Minister, was Stanley Bruce. And my father's name is Stanley Bruce Jones, so you can guess the rest of it. I mean, his parents named him after Stanley Bruce, so he's pretty conservative, you'd have to say. So ever since I was, young enough to, ever since I was sentient, really, I've been arguing with him. And he's very like John Howard. In fact, he loved John Howard. And so any kind of meeting with my father was not necessarily a meeting of mine.
So what were the comments from your father like after an interview with John Howard? Was he one of the people that would ring up the switchboard and flood the lights with that bloody lefty Tony Jones?
He wouldn't know how to ring up a switchboard.
Now, Tony Abbott, you've had a few kind of interesting conversations with Tony Abbott.
We have a bit of history.
You do have a bit of history, yeah, but there was one particular one evening where he said something to you after the show.
That was the evening where I asked him had he recently met Archbishop Pell.
Yes,
and he couldn't recall. Well, he actually said no, and I said, well, so you hadn't met him on this particular date at this particular time, and then he said, oh, well, yes. And so no turned into yes.
Yeah, and he was furious about it.
He was absolutely furious, and I think with some justification he'd been caught out. It appeared he'd been caught out.
That's your job, though, isn't it, to do that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the point about it was obviously that there were lots of issues on the coming across his desk which Cardinal Pell would have an interest in. So we were interested to know whether he'd been talking through policy and getting advice from the Archbishop. Mm-hmm. That was the key to it. But look, when he came off, and I've got to say that I'm quite fond of Tony Abbott, as it turns out. But he came off, and he was pretty angry. It was a pre-recorded interview, so I sort of saw what happened subsequently. But one of our cameramen actually goes to church with Tony Abbott, and as he went past his cameraman, he just leaned over to him and said, "You better pray for this guy."